Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to my panel. I appreciate it a lot. I know there's many other things you can be doing right now, and appreciate that you want to come and listen to me ramble for about an hour or so. I had this fantastic plan to do an epic multimedia type thing, maybe an animation of my OC flinging molten silver, and it forms into a beautiful piece of jewelry, and then it goes into my gallery. But I forgot. Those kind of things take a lot of time to do, and my time was all in the shop. Making some of the very beautiful creations I actually can see right now. I see a lighter right here, and I can see some pendants being worn. I greatly appreciate it. If you don't know who I am, if you got lost, or if you can't read my hat, my name is Silver Slinger. I am one of the Brony fandom's jewelers. I was formerly known as Chaotic Brony when I first started, and then after a while I decided it's time for a change, and I went with Silver Slinger. Plus I kind of like this name better because my father is Gold Slinger. That's what he calls himself, so I figured, well, I'll be Silver Slinger. What I do, like I said, I do the jewelry for the fandom. People ask me how I got started, how I got involved with designing jewelry. Well, I was actually born into it. As I said, my father goes by Gold Slinger. He took an interest in jewelry at the age of 17. He started it as a hobby in the basement of our home, and so I was just around it 24/7. And he encouraged me to try other things in life, do other things, but I learned very quickly and at a very young age that this was what I wanted to do because it is so cool, so much fun. And most people who actually end up designing jewelry for a living never see it coming. It's one of those things you kind of take it up as a hobby because you're kind of interested, or on a dare, or an extracurricular at college, and then you just realize this is amazing. This is what I want to do in my life. I actually have a cousin who's been working for us for 6 months, only 6 months. She started working for us, says, well, we need some extra money. And now she's hooked. She goes, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. She goes, someday I want to run the business when you're no longer around. I was like, slow down, you're not that much younger than me. As I said, I hope to be around for a while. I've been designing jewelry that is actually sellable, I might add. I've designed a lot of garbage my early years. Sellable jewelry since I was 16. I'm 27 now, so that'd be 11 years. And I've been doing the pony jewelry for about 3 years now. And how Pony got involved with jewelry was back in February of 2012. I was homesick. I was surfing the web, and once again, because this has happened many times before, but I just brush it off, once again, ponies were everywhere. And once again, my curiosity was piqued, and I said, what is going on? What is this? Why are there so many ponies? I mean, these are grown-ups, women, men who love the show. I said, what is this? And I kind of started researching, and as I got to researching, I discovered something very interesting that happened around that time. A certain gray, dirt-dyed mare got a speaking role. And a lot of people were excited about this, but a lot of people were upset because the speaking role brought up a lot of controversy at the moment. And being someone who was supposed to not care about the show, I was wondering to myself, what's the big deal? So I looked into it and I was like, they're offended. This is adorable. She's speaking and she's so, it's funny. I said, how could somebody be offended by this? And I was like, why do I suddenly care? Yeah, and so that was on YouTube, and in the related video on YouTube were other clips. Many funny little short moments from the show of the time, like Fluttershy, the shy one, screaming, "You're going to love me," at a bunch of cute, cuddly animals. Hours and hours went by me just watching random clips like that, and then I got to thinking, I upgraded my DVR recently. I got more channels. I said, no, I don't have it. And I went, but for fun, just for fun, I went in the search menu, typed in My Little, bam, right there on the list. My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. I do have it. I'll record one episode just because, whatever, I'll just do one. Oh, there's 2 that day. Okay, I'll do 2. Okay, I'll humor myself. Next day I go to watch the episode, theme song plays, nope, not gonna listen to that, I don't want my neighbors hearing that. And then I get into it. Lesson 0 was the episode. So, and thus it began. I watched lesson 0 and I was like, I am laughing at this. I said, I haven't laughed this hard at a cartoon since back in the years when SpongeBob was actually good. And I was like, this is amazing. I said, the voice acting is phenomenal. I'm used to watching these kind of cartoons with my nieces and nephews, and the voice acting would just kind of make me just, the animation would be just kind of so-so because they're like, oh, it's for kids. Who are we trying to impress? I was like, but the animation's fantastic. The colors are vibrant. The voice acting's good. I was like, this is really good. I said, okay, I can kind of see why people are into this. And I was like, oh, the first episode's over. Oh, there's another one. Let's see what this one's about. Cutie Pox. And I watched that one, and I was like, okay, this is good. I like that. I really like that. Oh, it's over. Okay, record the entire series. So, I started casual. During the time second season was still airing, and the season 2 finale came and went, and I was still kind of so-so into it. So when everyone else was like, it's over, a hiatus has begun, I was like, whatever. But after I caught the very last episodes of all of them, after I finally caught up, I was like, oh, that's it. I was like, well, I said, there's people doing stuff online. Let's see what this fandom's done. And I started watching animations and music videos and artwork and all this stuff, and I was like, this is phenomenal. I said, this is big. This is amazing. And I just like a spark of inspiration. I was like, I said, I want to contribute to this, but I don't have any talents. What can I contribute to this? I can't do animation. I can kind of do comics. Some of you might have seen those. And I was like, I can kind of draw, and I'm kind of funny. I said, but I don't have any real talent, And I kid you not, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, it was racking on my brain. I would be in my shop, hammering on a ring. I don't have any talents. Cutting something else. There's nothing I can do for this fandom. Working with a torch. No talent at all. There's nothing I can contribute. And then one day, it just kind of dawned on me, and I was like, hey, I can make pony jewelry. Has anyone done that? And I kind of did some research, and I saw some pretty, some not bad stuff. People were doing stuff out of clay, polymer, acrylic. Some people were sticking corkscrews in the heads of ponies and hanging them on a chain and going, pin it. And I was like, well, okay. I said, not bad. And I said, let me give it a shot. So I came up with the name Chaotic Brony, my first alias, in 5 minutes. And I don't know if anyone in here remembers me as Chaotic Brony. A few of you do. My first an alias was going to be Chaotic Boog, because Boog is a nickname in my family. And I was like, well, on the highly, highly unlikely chance that this gets me somewhere, people are going to be pronouncing my nickname wrong all the time. They're going to be pronouncing it Boog, like that bear in that one show. And I was like, I don't like that. I said another word would be Chaotic Brony. Yeah, that'll work. So, and then I went with that. I started small. I did a few small pieces. And most of my inspiration, though, came from the show. And one of my things I'm really well known for is reverse engineering pieces directly from the show. And that's actually the easiest thing for me to do, believe it or not. I actually can visually see a lead pony badge from one of the episodes, and I can just take it apart in my head and see exactly how many pieces I need to put together, how big to make them, what size to make them. That's the easy thing for me to do, and I love doing reverse engineering so much. The other thing, this is a little trickier, is sketching out the concept. That can be hard. I have literally stared at a blank page for hours on end. Hey, just nothing. And I would sometimes the ideas like apples to the core would come to me instantly when I'm watching the episode. And sometimes I would have to watch the episode over and over and over and over again. So let's forbid that should have to happen. Until something would finally come to me. I actually consider that the hardest part. The sketching and the coming up with the concept. I consider that to be the hardest part. The part after that creating, I've kind of divided into 3 different categories. My favorite, which is hand fabricating, that's how a lot of pieces in my gallery are done. And then engraving work. A lot of the pieces you see at my table are engraved, and I'll explain a little about that. And then there's casting, which I've done a little bit of. I'm still kind of learning it. Fabricating, sorry about that. Fabricating is, you start with blank sheets of metal, coils of wire, and you just form them, solder them, bend them into just beautiful works of art. This is actually considered one of the hardest methods of jewelry design, and it's actually becoming less and less common. I've heard from many jewelers who've been at it for years and years saying this is a lost art. Everybody used to design jewelry like this back in the day. You don't see this anymore. So it's becoming a lost talent. So I highly encourage people to give it a shot and see if it's something that you can do, because it's a fun way to make jewelry. Making jewelry like that with your... I was like, oh, okay. I was saying I was waiting for the hook to come yank me off the stage, but it's becoming a lost art, and like I said, I highly encourage people to give it a shot. It takes years of practice. Like I said, I've been designing, I kid you not, since I was probably 11 or 12. That's when my father taught me how to use a torch, Father of the Year, and a saw blade, and I've been practicing for about 15 years at this, and to get to where I am now, it takes a lot of practice. And I'll admit I'm a bit of a slow learner. Some of you might pick it up a little bit quicker, but it's definitely worth it though. What I'm going to do when I'm talking about the creating processes is I'm going to, if you have any questions about fabricating, engraving, casting, any of that, feel free to raise your hand. She'll deliver the mic to you, and I'll be happy to answer those questions. And let's go ahead and start with fabricating. Is anyone interested in fabricating? Have any questions about fabricating jewelry? Yes. Right here in the front.
My voice carries pretty well. What does that do? But I don't think it's. Oh, thank you very much. How does that process work in a general sense? Like, how many hours do you put in a single piece when you're fabricating something of jewelry, as opposed to some of the other processes?
Fabricating, time-wise, it really depends. Some pieces are very simple to do. Every piece is pretty difficult to do first, but when you do a piece over and over again, one of my oldest pieces, the Mare and the Nightmare Moon is watching, that symbol of her, I have made that piece probably about 100 times now, over and over. The very first time I made it, probably took me about 3 hours of trial and error, and now I can probably knock one out in about 45 minutes. You'll get faster over time, and you won't notice it because it happens gradually, but you will get really fast. And like I said, though, it depends on the complexity. There's pieces that have taken me 3 days working off and on, about 76 hours or longer, just working on small little tiny pieces, and it really does depend on the design and what metals you use too. If you're doing all silver, that's actually easier than if you're using accent metals like copper and brass. They're a little, they call them dirtier to work with because they're harder to solder together. So that can add to the time too. That can really rack up the hours. My advice for aluminum would be to stay away from it. Aluminum is extremely soft, and the places that I have seen that can do work with aluminum and jewelry usually have high pressure, very expensive equipment that bond them together, because aluminum melts. You breathe on it, and it almost melts. It melts at such a low temperature, and I would recommend just avoiding it. Other metals, kind of like silver, copper, brass, fusing them together really isn't that hard if you know what to do. It's all a matter of balancing the heat, making sure, because you got to understand which heats up faster than the other. Sometimes you got to heat up an entire piece before the solder joint will work, will flow. Sometimes you just got to heat up an area. You got to take that into consideration. Usually though with copper, silver, brass, it's essentially the same. You get them the same temperature around the, you got to heat the entire surface to get the one little joint to flow. That's pretty straightforward. Steel, if you want to try to incorporate steel, I've done that before. That's different too. Steel melts at a very, very high temperature, high enough that your silver, copper, it'll all be melted by the time it gets to soldering temperatures. So usually the best thing to do with that would be to use different temperatures of solder. There's low temp solder that takes very, very little. Doesn't matter what the metal, 200 degrees, it'll melt and flow in, and it works very well. And I've actually been using that for some of my pieces.
When you talk about soldering, I think of like a soldering iron for electronics and whatnot. Is it the same style of process, or are you using more of like an acetylene torch?
Yeah.
What's your process for welding?
A jeweler's process for welding is usually an acetylene torch, and it's about a multiple step process. You got to dip the piece in a type of, they call it boric acid. It's a type of coating that coats the piece, kind of cleans it and keeps it from oxidizing and discoloring the metal. And then you got to flux where you want the solder to flow. Make sure your flux doesn't go where the solder want to flow, because that solder will follow that flux wherever it drifts to. So you got to flux it. You got to heat, like I said with silver and all those, you got to heat the whole surface. You got to get your solder joint to flow. That can be tricky. And if it doesn't flow, you got to let it cool. Pickle it. That's another type. That's another type of acid. You pickle it. That eats the boric acid off. Clean it thoroughly and do it all again. But the better you get, the quicker you'll do, and the less you'll have to do that. But soldering is another one of those things that takes a lot of practice. And torch control is a gift that very, very few people have. But with time, you can get it. Were there any other questions about fabricating?
What was your most difficult piece to fabricate?
Pony or in general?
Either one.
All right. Well, the most difficult pieces for me for Pony to make, and I'm judging us by because at one point I think I was literally curled up in a ball on the floor, kind of rocking back and forth. It was about to go nuts. Were the crowns, the somber crown and the Element of Magic tiara I made. The ones that every time someone's asked me afterwards, will you make another one? I was like, no, don't put me through that again, please. Those were hard. And what made those hard was my equipment was not designed for things that big. The equipment that most jewelers use are designed to make things the size of a belt buckle or smaller, and I was trying to use this stuff to make these massive head pieces, and it was just reliving those moments. So that definitely Pony would be on that. Other than that, my other job was probably this. It was a brooch that a customer brought in. She handed us a piece of paper, a picture, and she goes, "Yeah, the Queen of England is wearing this brooch, and I want one just like it. Can you make it?" And my dad looks at it and goes, "Yeah, sure. Here you go." And I was like, the thing had about 200 diamonds that were the size of a pinpoint, tiny, tiny little things. This fancy little ball milligrain work all over it, this crazy, intricate design work. It was about a good 2 months off and on working on it, pulling my hair out, doing that, trying to set these little tiny stones. But when I was done with it, it felt great. And that was technically a cast piece, but that was definitely the most challenging non-pony piece I've made. And casting is actually the most common type of jewelry design. A lot of people, and there's actually, I don't know if you've met her yet, haven't had a chance to, but there's actually a jeweler in the vending hall who does cast pieces. They're three-dimensional and they're pretty cool. I say hats off to her. I haven't seen it at her booth, but I've seen people wearing them and they're very good. And this is the most common type of design. And casting, usually what you do is you take a wax model, you put it in a little metal flask, you pour plaster Paris called investment into it. It's a very, very fine plaster Paris that cures around it. You put it in a kiln overnight. It melts the wax out of a cavity in the bottom, hardens the plaster. You put that in a machine that you wind up. You put the molten silver, gold, whatever metal you want to use up against in a little crucible right up against that. You heat that up to just the right melting point. You can't get it too hot. If you get it too hot, it comes out bubbly, looks like a sponge. You get it too cold, it won't fill in your metal. It's an art. It's an art that my dad Goldslinger has perfected, and there's jewelers who've been doing this three times as long as he has who have no idea how he does it. And I'm very lucky because I have him as a teacher. And at the same time, it's very aggravating because he's like a drill sergeant teacher. Too hot, too cold, pull the torch back, pull the torch in, throw some flux, watch it, you almost burnt your hand, what are you doing? You know, it's like, stop. Yeah, it's like, I haven't even lit the torch yet, what are you doing? But but you got to get the metal just right, and right as you get that metal, you pull it to release a pin, and you just let it go, and it flings that molten metal right into the cavity of that investment and fills it in with a gold, silver, whatever model of what that wax was. It's brilliant. This is actually one of the oldest forms of making jewelry. This was discovered way back when. I mean, we're talking probably about 2,000 years ago, when a guy was sitting around a campfire, and he had his campfire got too hot, and it melted something he had of lead, and the lead poured and filled in a dog paw from his dog and made a perfect little lead-shaped dog paw, and that's where it actually started, and it's been the most common type of jewelry design and used still today. And then there's die striking. I'm going to skip that because I do not like die struck jewelry. Let's go back to casting. Does anyone have any questions about casting? Guy in the blue shirt. See him when it
Okay, so you mentioned copper and silver as things that you work with.
Mm-hmm.
That melting point is anywhere between 1900 and 2100 Fahrenheit.
It's about right, yeah.
What do you use as a crucible for something like that? I've tried graphite, and I find that it ignites and burns at about 1700.
Graphite is very good if you're trying to, if you want to melt metals together. Like if you want to make sterling silver out of pure silver, graphite's perfect because you drop in the amount of pure silver you need and the amount of copper alloy you need, and it'll mix it together without sticking to it. That's good for that. The crucibles that we use for casting, they're a really hard ceramic that can withstand a ton of heat, and metal likes to stick to them too. So what you usually have to do is after you get the ceramic, you gotta coat it with a lot of flux. You gotta get a glass-like surface on there, because what that does is that keeps the metal from sticking, but at the same time, any dirt, debris, or anything like that would be in the metal will stick to it, and you want it to be as clean as possible when it shoots into that. When it shoots into there, because you get that dirt in there, and again, you can have the same result. When you dig it out, clean it out, you'll have a big pit, something like that. Those are not fun to fill in. I've been there. Also, just real quick, if you ask me online, I can actually give you sources that sell the kind of things you need. There's sources that sell that kind of stuff to public that I can let you know about. All right. Yes?
Did you ever use platinum?
Okay, the thing about platinum, let me get a drink here because this is a doozy. Platinum melts at such a high temperature that you would literally go blind staring at it with the naked eye, heating it up. And our acetylene torches actually do not get hot enough to melt platinum. There's ways to melt platinum, some very, very expensive equipment you can get to melt platinum, but usually what we have to do is send it off, because it's a very tricky metal to work with. And truthfully, platinum is my least favorite metal to work with, because it's a dream for stone setting, because it doesn't have metal memory. You bend a prong, it stays there. Everything else, it's a nightmare. Every single other thing is a nightmare, especially finishing. So, but when it comes to casting platinum, though, we usually just job it out, because, like I said, it's a very hard metal to work with. And that's actually what makes it so expensive. Ironically, platinum is more expensive than gold generally, but it's not because it's rarer than gold, it's because it's harder to refine than gold. There's actually a ton of platinum in the earth. It's just in dust form. And you try to put that into a metal, it's very hard. So, was there any other questions about casting? Yes.
Sorry. I might have missed this. I came in a little late.
Okay.
But what do you use as a mold? Or what do you use to pour the metal into?
Into the mold?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
no, like the mold itself. What do you make a mold out of?
All right, so are you talking about the model?
I'm talking about the thing that you fill in with the metal.
Oh, the plaster piece?
Oh, it is plastic?
Yeah, it's plaster. Yeah, like I said, it's a type of plaster that's very, very fine. So it gets all the detail. I mean, you can leave a thumbprint on the wax model you use, and it'll come in. It'll show up on the gold model if it's that detailed. And actually, want to mention about the models a bit. The ways you can get wax models, the most common way of getting a wax model is you can carve it by hand. But most of your designs nowadays are actually not done by hand anymore. Most of them are done with 3D design software. People used to think the jewelry industry was timeless, but not anymore. And the 3D design process it's a program that actually lets you design a 3D model of your ring. It lets you put in, the prongs and everything. And if you've been following on Twitter, sometimes you'll see the models I made. I actually made a model just recently, a very hard one. And this program will let you change the different types of metals, the kinds of stones, and it's amazing. And there are many different versions of this program. The more intricate and more complex they are, the more expensive they are, and they get very, very expensive, especially when you get to the commercial grade stuff. But they're fun to use. And when you get the model you want in the 3D program, there's usually two different ways to mill the model. You can send it to a CNC machine that will actually carve the ring replica right out of a blank piece of wax. And was actually the way my father and I have been carving rings for the last 7 years. But even today, that's considered obsolete. And what we just got 3 months ago, and it's amazing, we actually have a 3D printer now for designing rings. And some of you probably might have 3D printers, or you've heard of different 3D printers, and they're pretty cool. This one is phenomenal. This one builds your wax model inside a wax cocoon. It lays down a wax cocoon and builds the model in midair inside of it. And when it's done, you drop it in a solution that dissolves the cocoon away, and you have a perfect model, no spokes, no little extra, nothing getting in the way of anything. And that is the most advanced way to design rings to date. And it's amazing, and it's a lot of fun. And was there any other questions about casting?
In general, let's say you're trying to learn it all yourself. Would you suggest any method or specific kind of materials or where to get them?
Kind of a starting point?
Yeah.
I would recommend YouTube. There's a lot of videos on YouTube of beginning steps of designing jewelry. The internet's your best friend. There's forums, YouTube. There are a lot of jewelers on the internet. Very happy to share their thoughts and opinions. Metal-wise, I would start with your base metals: copper, brass, nickel, silver, because they're very cheap. If you make a mistake, you're not out a lot of money. And if you can master designing with these cheaper, dirtier metals, when you move to silver, you'll be like, this is easy. This is actually you might be kind of intimidated because it's a little more expensive, but you'll find it's very, very easy to work with. And if you ever, want to attempt gold, which is very expensive to mess up, you'll try it and be like, this is super easy. This is amazing. I mean, you master the base metals, you can master any precious metal. And I'll tell you one thing: if you become a really good jeweler, if you can design jewelry, you can repair it, you can do just about anything with jewelry, and you will find a job somewhere if that's what you want to do for a living. Because jewelers are in a high demand right now. They're in such high demand. Jewelry stores are stealing jewelers from other jewelry stores, and I've seen that happen before. It can be brutal, but it's definitely an industry that's in high demand with very little supply of jewelers. So I'm going to move on to the engraving. The way I used to engrave back in the day was by hand, and when you start engraving by hand, the very first way you can do it, and this is kind of tedious, is you can get the tools and you can kind of push the engraver yourself by hand, and that can cramp up your hand. That can get really hard to do, really tiring. But if you get good at that, you can move on to the next step, which is to get an air-powered system that actually it kind of moves it like a little jackhammer, and it'll actually carve the metal away just cleanly and beautifully. And I was actually learning how to do that the same week I decided I was going to do pony jewelry, so the timing was perfect. And I was actually doing a lot of, some of you who've been with me, who's been following me for a while, might have seen a lot of my hand engraved stuff. And it was good, it wasn't bad, and I still do some of that. And then I moved on to the CNC engraver. That's what I use now for a lot of these things, like the lighter the gentleman up here showed me earlier. That's a CNC machine, and you can find these online. They're pretty easy to find. You can do laser engraving. I don't recommend it. It just scratches the surface. It wears away fast. What I actually use is a diamond scribe engraver. It actually goes into the metal and parts it, and it parts it, which strengthens it. So it may still be kind of a thin layer, but it's very strong, and it's the detail work on it's amazing. And that's where I'm at right now. I can answer questions about engraving. I can't tell you what kind of machine I'm using because it actually belongs to my father, and that was one of the things. He said I can't give away any of the names of our machine or anything. He said that's kind of secret. But if you have any questions about hand engraving or machine engraving, I'd be happy to answer those for you. Was there any?
With the engraving machines, do they use like water like CNCs do, or is it just straight up air, open air to where it's just filing away?
The CNC, repeat the, I'm sorry,
Okay.
long day in the
When I
bending
think
home.
of like industrial CNC machines, there's usually of something to blast away the excess materials and whatnot, or to keep the material cool. So with your one, is it just open air? Like when I think of when you're hand engraving with like almost like a drum or whatnot, it's just open air. Metals can get hot, they can burn. Are your machines like that, or does it have like some kind of medium to help keep things cool so you don't get burn spots?
It actually doesn't really need either. I mean, it's enclosed. It's enclosed for your protection, which really isn't necessary. But but there's no media or anything to keep it cool because it actually you set the speed and it just kind of scratches along. It doesn't really do a lot to get it hot enough to really damage it or discolor the surface or anything. It's they've got it down to a science, and the machine's smart enough that if it feels too much pressure working against it, it'll actually shut itself off, and it's actually done that before. It's pretty smart. I think the machine's smarter than me. I think it's safe to say it's smarter than me. And was there any other questions about engraving?
What all do you use to design the engraves? Because I'm just looking at the Spitfire lighter I got earlier, and just the cutie marks is so accurate that I wonder if you can just literally grab a vector, throw it into a design program, and then it comes out of the engraving. Or how would that work? Do you have to design all the
doing
things
that
yourself?
is very, just taking a vector right from the show and putting it on there. I kind of consider that the same as tracing, and I've seen how this fandom reacts when artists trace. So, and even if I wanted to do that, I actually couldn't because the line art in the show is very thick. It would do so many passes on the piece that it would not look good. What I do to transfer the image is I use reference images, and I do show style. I sketch it out on paper. I ink it, and I don't ink it on paper. I sketch it out on paper first to get the way I want. I transfer that into there, and then I have a Photoshop program that I do the ink art myself, and I just need a simple black and white image, and I try to make the line art to where it's not too thin because it doesn't show it very well, but not too thick because it looks horrible. And I have a program that I can send that black and white program to the program, and I can select it and tell it to create a tool path, and it'll sketch it right along the tool. It'll put a path right along the black and white lines, and it helps a lot. But it's still a very, very timely process. Like your lighter there, the Spitfire one, probably took me to get everything done and get it just the way I wanted it. It probably took about 4 evenings to get that the way I wanted it. Thank you. And let's see, we got about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to actually move on. I guess one of the things I said I would talk about up here is kind of the daily life of a jeweler. Anything from workshop incidents to, some touching moments, to some people that would just kind of, make you face hoof like no other. It's actually, if you find yourself ever working in a jewelry store, in the back, in the shop, or at the front on the sales floor, you will find quickly that there's almost never a dull moment. I mean, there's moments that can really terrify you. We've had people in our store who, they've been looking to cause trouble. Fortunately, those kind of people, we've been able to put most of them behind bars. Our police officers love us. But at the same time, there's touching moments. We had a couple. They were in their 80s. They were, he brought her in. She had no idea why they were there. He goes, "Honey, let me see your ring." And she gives her engagement ring. It's about 70 years, 60 years old, completely worn out. He goes, "All right." He goes, "You guys just take that." He goes, "Do you see any here you like?" And she goes, "Why?" And he goes, "I'll just pick one out." So she looks and she finds an engagement ring she likes, and he goes, "All right, let me see that." And he gets down on one knee and goes, "Will you remarry me?" And she lit up like she was 16 years old again, and it was the greatest thing ever. It was amazing, and we see stuff like that all the time, and it is just so much fun. And I am, one second here. Would you believe I actually got an F in speech class in high school? Yeah, but my favorite moments, though, are the moments that at the time just make me go, "Oh gosh!" But I can look back at them, and actually laugh. And the thing about jewelry is, I can understand if you don't know a whole lot about it, because how often do you buy jewelry? I mean, the average person buys jewelry less than they buy a car. So it's okay if you don't know the 4 C's of the diamonds, or if you don't know the different caratages of gold. That's fine. That's why you go to a reputable jeweler; they can tell you all that. But every now and then, we get people who come in, they'll ask or do something, and I'm just kind of like, what? We had this one girl who come in there one time, and I was actually in the back working. I was a lot younger then, all right? I was kind of ornery back then, and I was in the back shop working, and I looked out there, and I was like, "She's cute." I said, "I'm gonna go see." I said, "I think I'll go help them out," But my father was already out there, and as I was walking out, I heard her ask him, "Can you take a bunch of small diamonds and just kind of crush them together into one big diamond?" And I was like, on the other hand, I got a lot of work to do in the shop. I should probably get back there. And my dad's reaction, though, was good. He goes, "Yeah, let me just go into that phone booth over there, put on my Superman outfit. I'll do that for you right now." But he's ornery. He's actually very ornery. He likes to keep things laid back. And one of my favorite jokes he did one time was somebody came in with their crucifix, and most of you probably know what a crucifix is, the cross with the little Jesus on there. And somebody came in and goes, "Yeah, I need you to fix my crucifix. Jesus fell off." And my dad threw his hands up in the air and goes, "He has risen." It was awesome. He definitely keeps things interesting around there, and you got to do that. And but we still get people, though, that this one, and actually I got 2 stories, and I'm gonna let you decide which person here was the bigger idiot, because these 2 are both, I can't decide. First one was, this lady comes in. She comes in and she gives us 3 stones, decent sized stones, colorless stones, and goes, "I'd like you to check these and see if they're diamonds." And we were like, "Yeah, okay, sure. Where'd you get them?" "Oh, I inherited them from my aunt, and we're just wanting to know what they are." And we were like, "Okay." So we tested the first one, and it tested diamond. And we were like, "Yeah, that one's a diamond, and it's actually a very nice diamond." And she goes, "Oh." And we're like, "Okay." We tested the next one. That one's a diamond too. Also a very nice diamond. And she goes, "Oh no." And we were like, we tested the third one. You're like, "Yeah, they're all diamonds." And she goes, "Oh my God." And we're like, "This is a good thing." I said, "These are diamonds, and they're very, very nice, we might add. These are worth some money. What's the problem?" She goes, "I had 6 of these before." And she goes, "But I was talking to my husband, and I said, 'How do we know if they're diamonds?' And my husband went, 'Well, I know how you can tell.'" She said he scooped them up in his hand, went out into his shop, and said, "Now, honey, diamonds are the hardest material on earth. So I'm going to put this diamond on this anvil here, and if I smash it with this hammer and it breaks, it ain't a diamond. He takes the hammer, goes and smashes it, and goes, see, that one was fake. Brushes the crumbs away. Takes another one. Oh, that one was fake too. Takes the third one. Oh, honey, I don't think these are real. They all just shattered to pieces. And she goes, you know what? I'm just going to take the rest to a jeweler or someone. And when she told us that, my dad and I were just like, because they were decent-sized diamonds and they were very, very nice, so they were very, very expensive. But what she does next, I loved so much. It just made me crack it more than anything. She pulls out a credit card and goes, this is my husband's credit card. I want 3 more just like this. Oh, man. Yes, karma. And then we had one guy, this was actually just last week. And I always try to keep professional in the store because it's a jewelry store. You got to have some level of professionalism, as unprofessional as my father and I are. Blue jeans and a tucked-in polo shirt is my daily wear in a jewelry store. That's how professional I am. But we had a guy come in because one of the things that many jewelers do is they will buy your scrap gold and silver. And so we have a sign up that says, we buy precious metals, because that's what gold, silver, and platinum are. They're precious metals. We had a guy come in and he goes, I'd like to sell this ring. And my dad looks at it and goes, we can't buy that, it's stainless steel. And he goes, we don't have a market for stainless steel because you can't size it or anything anyway. And he goes, sign out there says that you buy precious metals. My dad goes, yes, we buy precious metals. That's not a precious metal. It's precious to me. Yes. That one was a doozy. Now, this one was an interaction between me and another customer, and this was my own personal little favorite. And this is the guy, I can't tell if this guy or the guy who smashed 3 very expensive diamonds, I can't tell which one had the bigger brain fart, but this guy comes in. Another thing we do is watch repair. A guy comes in and hands me his watch, and I look inside the watch, everything's in pieces. The markers, the hands, everything's just around, and I shake it, and I can hear underneath it, the mechanism, everything in there is also in pieces. And I look at it and I said, he goes, can this be fixed? And I said, what in the world happened to this? And he goes, well, I got water inside of it, so I put it in the microwave to dry it off. I said, what? I said, say that again. He goes, I put it in the microwave to dry it off. And I said, you put your metal watch in the microwave to dry it off? And he looks at me like I'm the idiot. He goes, well, just for 10 seconds. And I was like, I just went, wow. Yeah, and I was just speechless, and he just kind of stood there and he goes, so can you fix it or not? And I said, no, I can't fix your watch, buddy. You nuked your watch. I can't fix it. It's nuked. I'm sorry. So like the guy who microwaved his watch or the guy who shattered the diamonds, it's kind of close for me, but I kind of keep leaning towards the diamond guy. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, that was just... it was a fossil. I'll let you be the judge of that. Okay. But it's, yeah, there is never a dull moment in our shop. And that's out in the front. Now in the shop, I make my stupid mistakes too. And so does my father, like catching his hair on fire 2 weeks ago. We have a shop rule. If we have our torch lit and we set it back on our torch hooks, we warn each other. Torch is on fire, or torch is lit. Careful. Well, my dad has this nasty habit at work sometimes of just hearing wah 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 wah, because he kind of just goes into his own little world. I'm a lot like him, I should say. We're kind of the same. But when he tells me in that voice, that listen up, father voice, I'm like, yes, sir. But sometimes with me, he's just in his own little world, and I said, torch is lit, and he goes over and he scoots over here, and all of a sudden, and out of my peripheral vision, I see. I was like, what the? And he goes, and I said, I told you it was lit. And he goes, it was just. But I've done dumb things before too. The lighters. When I first got those lighters, I looked at them, and this was dumb. This was just flat out dumb. I had a brain fart moment. I wasn't thinking, and I was like, and I don't use many lighters myself, so I took the lighter, I pulled the insert out, and I looked at it, and I was like, well, there's a little hole in the bottom of this cotton, and that must be where the butane goes. Yeah. So we have to actually have a little can of butane in there, and I'm like, and I put it back in place, and I was like, well, did it work? I went and flicked it. First flick, my whole hand went up, and I was like, and I learned two things that day. I am a terrible firebender, and I can dance polka very well. Oh man. But that was back when I first had my lighter, so that was about 1.5 years ago. And oh gosh, so many stories. What else did I do? I'm trying to think of. I've done quite a few things. Some of them are honest mistakes that jewelers make all the time, and then some of them are just flat out stupid things. Yes. Oh, yes. Let's go ahead and do some more questions while I try to come up with some more things here.
Hey, for someone who wants to start making jewelry, is there a particular technique that you say would be good for a person to start with? And is there a particular item of jewelry that you've found to be more or less, preferably less, complicated to work on as a starting piece?
Okay.
To start, like, getting your feet wet.
Well, the first place to start would be don't start with torch work. All right, work up to the torch work. That's where it gets really complex. Start with your basic sawing, filing, that kind of work, the hands-on kind of work like that. That's a very good place to start. Start with pendants. Pendants are easy. Your neck can hold a lot of weight, so you got essentially a blank canvas. You start with the ring. You're limited to what you can fit on a finger comfortably. I've seen many rings that looked good, but were not comfortable to wear. And earrings are a little tricky too, because an earring is you do one, it looks fantastic. Now you got to do another one that looks just like it, except reversed. So that can be tricky too. And actually, that's probably one of the reasons the earrings are one of my least favorite to do. But definitely start with the pendant. Start with hands-on work, filing, sawing with a jeweler's saw, and then kind of work up to the other things. And like I said, there will be videos. You can find videos online and forums that will explain how to get started and how to do all that. And feel free to ask me questions too. I'm always happy to help. Like I said, I can't tell you what kind of machinery we use, especially the more higher end stuff. That's my father's rule. But I would be happy to help however I can, and I have helped many people. They send me notes or emails, and I get to them when I can, and I'd be happy to help. And I can't think of any more shop incidents that I'm just drawing a blank. But we got about 15 minutes left, so we're gonna just do a general Q&A.
I was just thinking about how you were talking about signing things. Mm-hmm. How long did it take for you to actually get the perfect signature for your stuff? Or is that the different type of signing?
Like the perfect, like when I sign my own work?
Yeah.
The CB, my chaotic brony symbol, was simple. I said C, B, perfect. That took me maybe 2 seconds. The silver slinger symbol took me about a week to come up with, because I was like silver slinger, and I was like, well, SS, and a lot of my followers in Germany were like, no, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And my mother did something funny. She was like, well, here, I got an idea. And she drew a sideways S and then a right ways up S. She goes, how about that? And I said, definitely not. And if you want to know and if you can't visualize it, draw a sideways S and a top S. You'll know what it looks like, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that would have been bad. So I was like, okay, well, I like the S idea, and then I was like, well, it's silver slinger. I said they both start with an S, they both end with an R. So I was like, okay, so I did the S, capital S, the capital S, and then I did the lowercase r that represents the end of both silver and slinger. And I was like, I like that. I said, that has really grown on me. And it's just one of those things you just, visualize. You just come up with something that looks cool and is recognizable. Don't get too complex. And I also suggest that if you want to start an alias for yourself to go under, if you want to do an alias, some people just use their real names, that's fine too. If you want to do an alias, I would suggest doing something simple, something easy to remember, something easy to pronounce. Because I see people all the time, I'm like, hey, you're that one guy whose name I never can pronounce. But yeah, it's just, yeah, Silver Slinger, easy to remember. Who else had questions here?
Besides the fact that gold doesn't tarnish, what makes it a precious metal?
As I mentioned before, gold isn't as, it's rare. That's what makes gold a precious metal. They've calculated years ago that gold is very, very, very hard to come by. It's just been something that's been determined since the Egyptian days. I mean, they were using a ton of gold back then. They were finding it all over the place. But it's just a commodity, I guess you could say. I mean, it's been used. I really don't know the full history of gold, but it's just been considered a precious metal because it was the oldest form of currency back in the day. Gold coin, that's what currency was gold. And certain amounts of gold, like a coin this big, was $2 worth of gold, so that was a $2 coin. And it's just been a commodity since practically the beginning of time, really. So it's just always been considered precious, and same with silver and platinum.
Hello, my name is Ryan. I'm a 3D artist by trade, and I was wondering, with alludes to the 3D with the 3D art which you had done before, what kind of programs do you use with your process for that, or is that a trade secret?
The 3D program we use, I can't give the name of it. That's part of the rules. But there's some simpler ones that are available to the public, and there's actually one that will be available to the public very soon. And I mentioned this at Everfree also. It's a 3D printer and a 3D program that comes with it that will actually print your piece in. It prints it in a clay that's embedded with silver or gold or some other type of metal. It'll print an exact model of it in this type of metal embedded clay. And then what you do after it makes your model, you put that clay model in a kiln, and it'll burn the clay away, and you'll have a perfect silver, gold, whatever metal you use model of your piece. And the company who I saw who did this, they were still developing it, but they said I looked and they said they're very, very, very close. For somebody wanting to kind of get started, that would be a fantastic start. Kind of expensive, but actually very reasonable for a piece of jewelry equipment. They were saying they're going to sell them for about $1,500. That's the software and the machine. So when those are available, I'll probably let everyone know, because that is a fantastic way to start. And
also, because you have more of a hands-on experience working with metals, do you do your design and then put it out to somebody who can actually 3D model, or did you do the 3D modeling yourself?
The
3D modeling.
Oh, the 3D modeling?
Yes.
It's all done myself.
Okay.
Yeah. Who else had a question? Oh, right here.
I actually had two gemstone-related questions.
Okay.
The first one is, how is amber to work with? Like fossilized trees, like amber, like tree sap. How is that to work with?
Amber is fairly easy to work with. Any, if you have any Dremel tool, any stainless steel little bit can carve it easily, and it has a sweet smell to it too. I actually like kind of working with it. Kind of tricky to polish. I haven't actually perfected polishing amber yet. It's very tricky. But again, forums online, there's people, ask 50 different jewelers, you'll get 50 different answers, and some of them will be very good. But it's easy to work with. It is getting kind of expensive to find though, so it's getting harder to find, so it's getting a little more pricier. But it's easy to carve and easy to work with.
And my second question is, what are some of your favorite combinations, like different colored gemstones and different metals and whatnot?
My favorite combinations, for silver, I like colorless and blue, but like diamonds and sapphires. Those are my favorite for silver. For gold, yellow gold, your rubies, your red colors, and your green, like your emerald green colors, beautiful, very beautiful. You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
How does the price of the raw materials that you get affect what you make in the shop?
I'm sorry, one more time?
How does the price of the raw materials that you get in affect what you can make?
Oh, the raw materials?
Yeah.
The price of the thing about silver is it's pretty low in price right now. It's actually, it's 1 ounce of silver. Last time I checked was around $12 for 1 ounce of pure silver. When it comes to how much the material I use, it adds up to so little that I actually have not had to really change my prices much. It has dropped quite a bit since 3 years ago. I have considered lowering them a little bit, and on some of them I have. Like the Attendees design I did recently, 3 years ago that would have been $65. Now it's just $55 because it's been so low. Gold, on the other hand, it has been up, down. It's been a roller. It's been left, right, zigzagged. It's over here, over there. It's been all over the place, and that has made it a nightmare for us. My father finally just said, "So okay, stop pricing the gold. We're going to put it in code, and we're just going to do the math daily because this is getting because we kept having to tear the tags off and repricing them because gold goes up, it costs us more to order, so we got to get more. Gold goes down, it costs us less, and people check on that. It's silver, no problem. Gold."
I think I figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
The watch guy is the bigger idiot because at least the diamond guy had the scientific fact behind him. He wasn't wrong, but his experiment was.
That's good. I think we'll go with that.
What would you have to say to somebody who's planning on doing CNC art in the Brony fandom?
CNC art?
Yes.
What kind of CNC
Wood,
art?
sorry.
Wood design?
Yes.
I would say go for it. I mean, that's another, wood design is another one of those mediums that there's very little people working in, and I say if you want to give it a shot, I don't know where to begin. I don't do any word work myself, but I highly encourage it. Yeah, there are CNC machines that will carve out wood. In fact, mine is actually designed that if I wanted to carve out wood, I can do a few modifications and it'll carve wood. We've done it before, but I considered it and I was like, nah, I'll stick with metal. But CNC, yeah, definitely, go for it. No, I can't burn wood. It doesn't get hot enough to burn wood. Just carve it or scratch the surface. Time for a few more. And this can be any question in general. If you want to know who Best Pony is, that's obviously Rarity. We'll go ahead and skip that one.
Will you ever bring your father to a convention to ever run any kind of vendor with you?
I would love for the Brony fandom to meet Goldslinger because he's pretty much taught me almost everything I have known, and he's the one that gives me advice all the time and helps me out. He just has absolutely no interest. In all fairness, he gave the show a shot, unlike my mother, she clicks on my little, nope. That was pretty much how my mom was. My father gave it a shot. He watched 2.5 episodes and just said, it's not for me. At which I was like, oh man. I said, because I'm good, but he's phenomenal. If he designed jewelry, you guys would be like, Silver Slinger who? He'd be right here. I'd be over there going, what he said. So. But yeah, and he is so full of character in life. He would have been. I think he would have made a fantastic Brony. He really would have. But he gave it a shot and just wasn't for him, which is commendable. Yes.
What was your first con?
Vendedat? Las Vegas Unicon was my first convention. So how I'm still here. I have no idea. I actually highly considered giving up because that convention, from getting there to the convention itself, was a nightmare. And I think the rough travel there was a sign that I should have gone to begin with. But I was like, no, this is going to be a good convention. I got to get there. But yeah, I vended there. Highly considered giving up on it because that was just a disaster. I lost a ton of money. But at the same time, I was like, this was a fluke. So I gave it another shot, and now I consider my real first convention I've been to that would be TrotCon. TrotCon 2013 was my first. Good time for 3 more? Or?
No, we have 2 more minutes. How does
What's that?
How does resizing
Resizing rings?
Yeah.
That's different. Sizing a ring down is no problem. You cut the ring and you cut out a certain piece of metal depending on how much you need to go down. I mean, it can be just a tiny sliver to a huge chunk of it, and you just pull it. You just bend it together, solder it, re-round it on a ring mandrel. You might have seen the plastic one I had on my bench. I have a stainless steel one back home. You re-round it on that, reshape it, refinish it, file the solder joint away, polish it up. Pretty straightforward. It's probably, if you ever do jewelry repair work, if you ever do that kind of work, this is one of the first things you'll learn how to do, and it's pretty simple. What makes that tricky is sometimes you have rings with stones, you pull it apart, it causes those stones to fly everywhere and go missing, and you're on your hands and knees on the floors for 30 minutes looking for a stone the size of the eyeball of a fly, and you're just like, where is it, where, you know. Sizing up's a little trickier. Some people cheat and they'll just put it on a mandrel and they'll just hit it with a ball peen hammer until it kind of just stretches it up, and that can work sometimes. If you're going up just a little tiny bit and it's got a thick shank on the ring, go for it. If you're going up a lot, usually you have to cut it and you have to add in a piece of metal, and some people do a balancing act and hope it doesn't pop out when they're trying to heat it up. My father and I do a dovetail method where you actually on the shank of it you have it like this, kind of dovetailed. And then on the piece you add, you actually have it inverted, and it fits in like a puzzle. Holds it beautifully, twice the surface of solder, and it never comes undone. And that's pretty tricky too. That's time-consuming also. And sizing rings, like I said, would be one of the first things you would learn on jewelry repair. Out of time. I want to thank you all for coming and listening to me ramble for an hour and stutter and do this. I'm sure that got annoying. And I just want to say that I would not be up here right now if it wasn't for you guys. So I want to say I appreciate all of you so much. You guys are awesome. A lot of people don't say this, but I would not be here if it wasn't for you. This is all thanks to you guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Also, be sure to stop by my table tomorrow. 25 to 50% off everything.